Good morning. Woo. That got your attention. I'm Beth Barger, and I'm the worship associate for this Sunday's service. We are excited to welcome you to our worship service this morning. We're so glad to have you with us today, whether you're joining us in person or virtually, whether you're here for the first time or whether you've been here longer than you can remember. Here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths and no faith in particular. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome among us.
I'd like to invite Sandy Steele forward for a quick announcement before we start our worship service.
So you may notice that a number of people are wearing their Side with Love shirts or their pride shirts or have little flags up. At the end of the service today, we're going to all sing This Little Light of Mine, and we're going to video record it. I don't know how much of this room we're going to capture, but we're going to get your voice for sure. And we're going to send this into our Texas Impact partner in Austin, who is going to promote this on social media. Why, you say? Well, Tuesday, the Senate and the House will be hearing SB 14. It's come out of committee. It's going to the main floor for a vote and to be heard. It bans transgender essential health care. So it's a really not a good bill. There's also a bill being heard in committee tomorrow that really bans college transgender sports activities, and it's a very restrictive bill as well. It's such a beating for the LGBTQ community right now. So we're doing this recording to lift them up and really show that we support them, regardless of what our legislature's doing. And I'm probably going down tomorrow to get my voice heard and be a part of the rallies and the sing-in that's going to be on Tuesday. So thank you all for wearing your shirts, and if you're not, it's okay. We can still have our voice be heard.
Thank you, Sandy. So at the end of our service, we'll have courage, we'll join together in song and celebration and joy and show our support. Our call to worship this morning comes from the writings of the Reverend Gretchen Haley. She writes, "Come in rejoicing if joy is on your heart. Bring your praise and sense of wonder. Fill this place with all your gladness at life's sweetness and sweet surprise. Come in grieving if loss is in your bones. Bring your anger and your struggle, your deep disorientation and your longing for what no longer remains, your longing for what has never been. Come in confessing if regrets burden your soul. Bring yourself in all your humanity, your imperfections and your short-sightedness, your impatience and your struggle to be here in this moment as it is. Come in with all of yourself, just as you are. For here is a place for the living, a place for real life. This momentary, mundane, miraculous mess. Here is a place for the remembering, all of it, all of ourselves and the ways we remain connected in this common course, held in a love that through it all calls us on. So come, let us worship together.
Our chalice lighting words this morning are an excerpt from Mary Oliver's poem, Invitation. She writes, "It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world." And then if you'll join me for our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth, thus we covenant together. And then our opening hymn is number 1007, "There's a River Flowing in My Soul," and that's in your teal hymnal.
So Horizon helps in the larger community by collecting donations for MetroCrest services. And a list of items needed can be found in our newsletter. So if you've brought donations for MetroCrest, please pass them down to the aisle because I'm going to be inviting our young folks and young at heart to come for a time for all ages. All right. I'm ready for you. Oh, it's so good to see you. I just want you to know many of these young people were doing a service project yesterday afternoon, and it's so great to see you here. So the first thing I want somebody to do is, if you want to try to guess what's in this box, could you raise your hand? Okay, I'll be right there. Just a moment. All right, he says he thinks it's a heart. Let's see if he's got it right. Yeah, you know it. It is a heart. Good job, good job. So we've got a heart in the magic box this morning. So would you raise your hand, and I'm going to ask you some questions. What does a heart stand for? What does it mean? What does a heart mean? Go ahead. Love, excellent. There's some other things too. There's something besides love. Can you think of something? What else does a heart stand for? No? Okay, who knows the Wizard of Oz story? Okay, well, now let me ask you a different question. I'm going to go a different direction. What if I told you a heart stands for courage? What would that mean? How could a heart stand for courage? What's up with that? Okay, go ahead. Yeah, because you want to feel brave, exactly. So sometimes we say a person has heart, meaning that they have courage. And so I want to ask you, and I may have to ask the audience too, can you think of a time that you showed courage? Like, what happened when okay, go ahead. Riding a bike, like for the first time? Yeah, riding a bike is scary. Okay, go ahead. Oh, riding a scooter too. How about some of our folks in the seats? Can you raise your hand and tell me something that you did that took a lot of courage? Oh, just conversations. Yeah, definitely. Oh, confrontation. I'm so sorry. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so all of those things take courage. And do you know what? So the reason we talk about heart and courage is because we have to know what is inside our heart. There's a little voice inside of us which speaks to us about what's important and what is right. Some people call it your conscience. So have you ever had a time where you followed your heart, the little voice inside you, to do something courageous? It's really tough. Like, can you think of an example? This is kind of a tough one, so I'm going to give you a second to think. How about somebody from our audience, and maybe somebody will have to relay the message up this way. A time where you showed courage by listening to your heart. Oh, that's right. When you come out of the closet, that means that the identity you've been showing to the world is not really your true identity, and you show the world your true identity. Oh, yes? Talking to your Republican senator. Oh, yes, talking to your Republican senator. That's right. Maybe there's some legislation you didn't like. Oh, good. I love how the adults in the audience are participating. One more. So let me make sure I get this right. Sticking to what you believe, even though you might be in the minority, meaning not a lot of people agree with you? Yeah, for sure. So did any of our folks on the floor here think of a time where they followed their heart and did something courageously? Did you think of something? Oh, yes. Okay, we're talking about like sitting in the window seat in an airplane. Yeah, that takes a lot of courage to do that too. So, okay. So let me tell you what. This is how you know you're acting courageously and listening to your heart. For us, it makes you move towards the positive, towards love, instead of something negative, like bad feelings. It makes you feel good inside. And you don't get that funny feeling when you're doing it. That's how you know you're listening to your heart. You kind of feel relaxed about it. When you do it, you go, yeah, that was the right thing to do. And last of all, you'll feel relief, like, oh, so glad I did that. Or you just like feel good inside. It's just like you just know it was the right thing to do. And as we've heard, sometimes it's not easy to have courage and follow what's in our heart. It's important to listen to that little voice inside us so we can be the best people we can be. And not only for everyone else around us, but for us too. So thank you so much for listening. We're going to go ahead and go to our classes now. Let's go ahead and sing you out.
Be alive, be alive.
For our offertory this morning, we give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. The offering will now be joyfully given and received.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in the world of our creation. What we'll see will defy explanation.
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Wanna change the world? There's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with your imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. You will find in your mind there's a world of endless fascination. No more fun place to be than in your imagination.
You can dream any dream. You can savor every situation. Life in there's a sensational sensation.
If you want to see magic lands, close your eyes and you will see one. Wanna be a dreamer, be one. Anytime you please, and please save me one.
Thank you. Our first reading this morning comes from the writings of poet and activist Audre Lorde. She writes, "I have come to believe over and over again that what is most important to me must be spoken, made verbal and shared, even at the risk of having it bruised or misunderstood. That the speaking profits me beyond any other effect. Forced to look upon myself and my living, what I most regretted were my silences. Of what had I ever been afraid? To question or to speak as I believed could have meant pain or death. But we all hurt in so many different ways all the time, and pain will either change or end. Your silence will not protect you. And of course, I am afraid because the transformation of silence into language and action is an act of self-revelation, and that always seems fraught with danger. On the cause of silence, each one of us draws our own fear of contempt, of censure, or some judgment or recognition of challenge, of annihilation. But most of all, I think we fear the visibility without which we cannot also truly live. That visibility which makes you most vulnerable is also our greatest strength." Here ends the reading. We come now to the time in our worship service that we set aside for meditation and prayer. We'll have a time of shared silence, hear the joys and sorrows of our community, hear a spoken prayer, and we'll have a special response this Sunday taught by Kel and some choir folks. I invite you to join me now in a time of silence. We have both joys and sorrows to share this morning. We share in joy with Daniel, joyful at being a part of the Beltane celebration last evening. We share in that joy. We also share in sorrow with Ellen Bratton. Ellen's beloved mother, Chloe, passed recently, just shy of her 92nd birthday. We're sending love to you, Ellen. The words of our prayer this morning come from the writings of the Reverend Karen Johnston. Let the spirit of meditation, of prayer, of reflection, of connection to that yearning inside you for something larger than yourself be your company, moving you to stillness. Let us slow into this space. Let us slow into this moment. Let us slow into our bodies. Let us find our breath. Let our breath find us. A breath in, however it is that your body allows. A breath out, however it is that your body allows. Breathe in, breathe out. A breath to connect to self, breath to connect to the earth, breath to connect to the all that is. This connection may bring pain, for the world is crying out. War, legislated hate, violence, misery, inequity, betrayal. May we remember that our pain is not enemy to our joy, not enemy to our happiness, but pathway through. The only way out is through. When the world is on fire, when there is war in foreign lands, waking within us fear or anger or sadness, when someone we care for is struggling, when strangers are treated less than. That we feel pain is a reminder that there is no separation. That we feel pain is a signal of our interconnection. That we feel pain alerts us to the presence of and our participation in the interdependent web of all existence. It is this same connection that allows us to feel renewed in surprising ways when we take in natural beauty or behold art that breaks open our hearts or create art that moves the hearts of others. When we generate grace for others, even when they don't seem to have earned it. When we generate grace for ourselves, even when we don't seem to have earned it. When we move our bodies, however they move, whatever our shape or size, for they are all miracles. It is this same connection that allows us to feel emboldened by the love shown to us by others, affirmed in our worthiness so that we might pass on that same courage to others in need of our loving witness. It is this same connection that is fuel, fire, and food, propelling us to truth-telling even when it seems the risks are high, propelling us to love more boldly even when it seems the sacrifice too dear, propelling us to show up even when we do not know what it is we are supposed to do. Having found our breath, let us breathe. Having found our breath, let our breath breathe us. Breathe in and out, connecting to self, connecting to the earth, connecting to the all that is. Amen, and blessed be. I'd like to invite folks forward now to teach us our responsive song.
Listen one time, and then follow Deb thereafter. Courage,
Courage,
my friend,
my friend,
you do not walk alone. We will walk with you, and sing your spirit home. Courage, my friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you, and sing your spirit home.
Our second reading comes from Brené Brown. She writes, "Courage is a heart word. The root of the word courage is cur, the Latin word for heart. In one of its earliest forms, the word courage meant to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart. Over time, this definition has changed, and today we typically associate courage with heroic and brave deeds. But in my opinion, this definition fails to recognize the inner strength and level of commitment required for us to actually speak honestly and openly about who we are and about our experiences, good and bad. Speaking from our hearts is what I think of as ordinary courage." Brené Brown from I Thought It Was Just Me, Women Reclaiming Power and Courage in a Culture of Shame.
The benediction at my childhood church included a line, "Have courage, hold on to what is good." And I can remember these words said together week after week, so much so that they are etched into my memory. The words I now know are biblical in root, adapted by a UCC church, adapted by a UU church, to become something new. And I like thinking of courage and holding on to goodness as deeply connected. I am a lover of and collector of stories, and as I think about courage, I am reminded of all the people who led movements for change, most of them who didn't think they could, hoped someone else might be chosen, who wanted to give up at times. And it was these people, women, people of color, queer and trans folks, who led movements that made change we now embrace, even though many of them would not see this change in their own lifetimes. Often it is those with nothing left to lose that are most able to act with bravery. Audre Lorde wrote, "We can sit in our corners mute forever, while our lives are wasted, while our children are distorted and destroyed, while our earth is poisoned, we can sit in our safe corners as mute as bottles, and still we will be no less afraid." And it leaves the question hanging, why not do something? Why not say something? And sometimes to go on with life, to go on living for the world you believe in, is the most courageous thing of all. The word courage itself can often be kind of nebulous, some equating courage with a lack of fear, some saying to have courage is to be afraid and to move forward anyway, to do it anyway. In our culture, ideas of courage or bravery have too often been equated only with patriotism in a way that I think has made us believe that courage is something only some people have, instead of something that we all try to find at different parts of our lives. And the common thread through all of these understandings is that to talk about courage also means that we must wrestle and tangle with fear. What is it that scares us, and why? Courage requires us to name our fears, but fear is complicated. It lives in the animalistic part of our brain, sometimes beyond rational thought. We are afraid of all kinds of things, some that will most certainly happen, and some that probably never will, and many things in between. We might fear what people think of us. We could fear spiders, snakes, natural disasters. We might fear our bodies and our health failing. We might fear the loss of relationships with those we love. Loneliness. I think at our cores, we fear loneliness, maybe most of all. And at the root of so many of these fears is the feeling of change, of loss, of a lack of control. We fear not knowing, not controlling, not being able to make a plan, not being able to make choices about what might happen to us. One of my teachers in seminary would remind us often that change, even change that we want and welcome with our whole heart, requires some loss and will come with glimmers of grief for what was. Some loss of the current reality, even if we think the change is for the better. Maybe even simple joys that we learn to look for in the midst of sorrow will turn out to be things that we miss. We've talked before about the 5 remembrances, the wisdom from Buddhism that reminds us of the impermanence of our being and of life. They talk about growing old, that there's no way to escape growing old, that eventually all of us will be in poor health, that there's no escaping that we will all one day die, that we don't escape death. And they include reminders that everything dear to us and everything we know will change. There's no way to escape being separated from loved ones, the separation that this change brings. And that our actions are like belongings that we carry with us. They are the ground on which we stand. And maybe that is courage too, in the midst of impermanence, to take responsibility for our actions and the ripple effects they create. The Reverend Hannah Capaldi writes, "I admire rivers a lot. They are not afraid to change, not afraid of change. They are always changing, always moving, taking the present moment with them downstream, ever running, ever tripping toward a destination beyond what we can see." Nature gives us these gifts, these places to look for inspiration, even when we're not able to ride the waves of change this way ourselves. James Baldwin said that to defend oneself against a fear is simply to ensure that one will one day be conquered by it. Fears must be faced. The Reverend Jason Cook writes, "Too often human beings look to defend themselves from what they're afraid of. Precautionary measures are of value, of course, but living in a state of perpetual dread is not living. To face our fears is to take heed of the lessons we have learned from being scared. To be truly afraid is to sometimes feel like there is no tomorrow. And yet each person here has been through valleys of deep fear and emerged out the other side. Wiser, stronger perhaps, maybe wounded too. Fear is not without its sharp edges. But when we turn toward the fear in our full selves, wide and tall and strong in the power of all that we are, those sharp edges no longer cut so deep. Indeed, we have the stuff we need to face our fears, the stuff in our spirits that is made of life itself, life's courage and bravery, life's resilience, life's spirit of eternal renewal and blessing. Fears can often manifest in anxiety, as many of us know well. We wonder, will the test results come back okay? Will I still have the job next year? Or, even closer to home, we might wonder, who will come to serve this church next? And we have no way of knowing these answers. But it's natural to wonder and to worry and to turn them over in our mind. That is part of being human. Fear and the things we have been through in our lives that have been difficult, terrifying, traumatic in some way, they don't ever really completely leave us. As Danielle Spratley writes on fear, one thing that comes up for me is how fear lives in the body after trauma, and how my body can feel uneasy sometimes in safety and in love because it's waiting for the next thing. And so when it comes, it compounds on all the other trauma that lives there and still needs to be exorcised. And this turns safety and love into things to be feared because they're distractions from the vigilance my body lives in. It is one way my fear makes my body pliable to trauma and makes connection and belonging seem like danger. This is an incredibly difficult place to be, waiting for the next terrible thing to happen. For some of us, this is how life has been. And to eventually learn to trust again, to teach our brains what safety looks like, to allow ourselves to experience love despite fear, that is an act of courage. Pema Chodron writes in her book, When Things Fall Apart, "The first time I met Trungpa Rinpoche was with a class of fourth graders who asked him a lot of questions. And one boy asked him if he was ever afraid. Rinpoche answered that his teacher had encouraged him to go to places like graveyards, places that scared him, and to experiment with approaching things he didn't like. And he told a story about traveling to a monastery he'd never seen before. And as they neared the gates, he saw a large guard dog with huge teeth and red eyes. It was growling ferociously and struggling to get free from the chain that held it. The dog seemed desperate to attack him. And as he got closer, he could see its bluish tongue and foam spraying from its mouth. They walked past the dog, keeping their distance, and entered the gate. But suddenly, the thing he feared happened. The chain broke, and the dog rushed at them. Everyone screamed and froze in terror, but Rinpoche turned and ran as fast as he could straight toward the dog. And the dog was so surprised that he put his tail between his legs and ran away. Chodron continues, "We can meet our match with a poodle or with a raging guard dog. But the interesting question is, what happens next? The spiritual journey involves going beyond hope and fear, stepping into unknown territory, continually moving forward. The most important aspect of being on the spiritual path may be to just keep moving." There is a saying that courage is fear that has said its prayers. And as far as my version of prayer, I don't believe that the purpose is for an intervention from a higher power. That's not what I believe about God or the spirit of life or the mystery of which we are all a part. Prayer is not for any other being or presence, but for the one praying. It is selfish in a way. It's done because I believe it will do my own heart good to get all the things weighing on it out on the metaphorical table, so that I may look at them in the light. Rabbi Harold Kushner, who passed this weekend, wrote, "People who pray for miracles usually don't get miracles, any more than children who pray for bicycles, good grades, or a good partner get them as a result of praying. But people who pray for courage, for strength to bear the unbearable, for the grace to remember what they have left instead of what they have lost, very often find their prayer answered." He went on to write that people need to feel that their lives make a difference in the world. "We are not afraid of dying," he wrote, "so much as of not having lived." Many here may be familiar with Kushner's book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, a classic in the world of spiritual care. His work touched many, in part because he drew on his personal experience with grief after the death of his teenage son. Kushner wrote, "Like a lot of children who feel they're going to die soon, he was afraid he would be forgotten because he didn't live long enough, not knowing that parents never forget. I promised I would tell his story." Kushner, in his book, also wrestles with deep theological questions. He wrote, "I don't know why one person gets sick and another doesn't, but I can only assume that some natural laws which we don't understand are at work. I cannot believe that God sends illness to a specific person for a specific reason. I don't believe in a God who has a weekly quota of malignant tumors to distribute and consults his computer to find out who deserves one or could handle it best. He continues, "What did I do to deserve this is an understandable outcry from a sick and suffering person, but it is really the wrong question. Being sick or being healthy is not a matter of what any divine power decides we deserve. The better question is, if this has happened to me, what can I do now? And who is here to help me do it? Who is here to help us do it?" Critics of Kushner's work argued that this theological argument made God and humans cheerleaders for good. But I have to say, I'm not sure that's the critique they think it is. I don't mind being a cheerleader for goodness amidst the pain of this world. I believe that holding on to what is good is part of having courage. Courage, as Brene Brown reminded us in the reading Beth shared earlier, courage is at its root a heart word. It is about telling one's heart. And to tell one's heart, to me, is in some ways about truth and authenticity and honesty. Can you show up as you truly are? Is it possible to allow other people to really see you, as uncomfortable as that may feel at times? Can we be open with one another about the good and the bad parts of our lives? Can we be honest about our fears? And do we have it in our hearts to keep going anyway? A lot of this, too, is about vulnerability, which many will recognize as Brene Brown's concentration and area of study. The Reverend Carrie Muller says it another way. Another heart word is credo, Latin for I give my heart. What we believe, we give our hearts to and have the courage to embody. The Reverend Karen Johnston writes, "Wise ones say we can be good, good enough, and imperfect all at the same time. Wise ones say that we can listen to understand, not necessarily agree, and be moved by a truth that does not make sense to our lived experience, and let it change our world. They tell us also to raise up those who are trodden upon, to cultivate humility when the world would rather we grow certitude in our hearts. Wise ones remind us we can recognize that today and every day." I don't think anyone can exactly teach or tell us what it means to have courage in our particular life circumstance or situation. No one knows what fears you might be overcoming just to move through the day, the month, the year. Each one of our stories is unique in its own way. But I do think that part of courage is the theology that Kushner wrote about being cheerleaders for the good that is happening in the world, in our day-to-day lives, being part of goodness in this world. Courage is about holding on to what is good in a world where there's a lot of things that are not good. I think courage is about speaking the truth of our heart, whether that be to power or just to a friend. I think courage is looking for strength to move through another day when grief may be all-consuming, when the silence is so loud. I am reminded of Kushner's life and the pain of losing his son, and I'm thinking about the way his courage to name his pain, to tell the truth about grief and loss, was able to help so many others. So courage, my friends. We do not walk alone. May it be so. Amen. At this time, I'd like to invite us to rise, either in body or in spirit, and to remember that as we sing this closing hymn, this is a celebration. This is a statement that all genders are whole, holy, and good. This is us joining in spirit with all folks who believe that. So let us sing together.
If you are willing and able, come towards this part of the room and face that way. That's where the camera is.
Stay there. Do you want to extinguish the chalice? So we extinguish the flame of our chalice, but certainly not our mission: to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. We do this because we envision a beloved community filled with compassion, helping all to thrive in a just world. So join hands, folks, as you're comfortable. May we go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering, and honor all beings. Go in peace, my friends.